Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack's Sports Show. Today we're on from 8 to 10, as we are every day from Wednesday to Sunday. We're going to here to fill you with 2 hours of sports. You can see us live on Mac's Sports page, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Like, follow, and subscribe where you can. I'm Mac with my co-host Jack Hirsch, a legendary sports writer, former president of the Boxing Writers Association. And today, Jack, we have an unbelievably big boxing show that we'll be having on today with some great guests. And how you doing today, my New York friend?
I'm doing great. I mean, a boxing show, you see I'm all ready for it. And I have my Lomachenko cap on, too.
I see you. Today we got the Iceman, John Scully, 7-time Golden Glove boxing champion, middleweight, light heavyweight contender, analyst for ESPN, and also the trainer of champions. So we'll have him on. We'll also have on Joe Santo, who is the current president of the Boxing Writers Association. And at 9 o'clock, Jack, we have on 2 special guests. We have on Mr. Rappaport and Mr. Majeski, who will be guiding us through the upcoming fight, October 17th.
Dennis Rappaport and Majeski, 2 guys who love to talk boxing and know an awful lot about it, as does John Scully and Joe Santo.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you love boxing, this is the show, I think, of the year, Jack. I mean, we got a lot of boxing knowledge coming at us all day today. So
you got me too, Mac. I know a little bit myself. I know you wanted to surround the show with all these guests, all this knowledge, but
right.
Okay, I mean, I feel like I'm on the practice squad for the boxing team, okay? I can just sit and watch, but can't, I can practice during the week, but I can't, now that it's boxing, I can't get in the game or what? I mean, I think you're activating me for this show.
I think, Jack, it goes without saying your knowledge in boxing, Jack, that's for sure. So what we'll do first, in the first half hour here, we'll talk about a little sports updates. And the MLB was firing on all cylinders last night, Jack. The Dodgers finally explode for 15 runs. And, they kind of squeaked by 15-3.
I got to tell you something funny, Mac. This has happened to you a lot of times, and it's happened to all fans, all people. Big games on TV, you're really looking forward to it, but you're doing errands around the home, so on. So you say, okay, I'm going to get there at the end of the first inning, beginning of the second inning, and you're kind of hoping it's no score, that you don't miss anything. So I get to the TV, I just got caught up in errands, and I'm figuring it's the end of the first, maybe the second inning, or whatever, thinking I'll see a 0-0 score. I tune in. I see inning number 1 is the first thing that catches my mind. Then I see 1-1, 11-0, and I go like, what? Like I had to keep looking and staring at it. First inning, 11-0?
Yes. And
after that, I only periodically watched the game because realistically it was over.
Right.
And the Dodgers to get 10 of those runs with 2 outs in the inning.
Yeah,
I mean
listen, we know that we all know that the Dodgers have a really, really good team, well-rounded team. They got a great hitting team, and I still think that Atlanta has the edge, Jack. And I'm gonna tell you why. Good pitching beats good hitting. And I remember the older Yankee teams where they had a powerful offense, and even in the World Series, they would lose, and it would be 4-3. In those 3 innings, they would score unbelievable amount of runs. Their offense would click in. They went against the lesser pitchers on the pitching staffs, so they would lose 4-3 with a huge amount of runs in those 3 games. But the other 4 games, they would get held down by pitching. And I still like the Braves, Jack. If they don't get shocked by the score and let that score, that one game, affect them, I think the Braves still have a shot at winning this series.
The Braves have a great shot because they're up 2-1. They're up
Right.
2-1. So obviously it's more than just a shot. The pressure's really on the Dodgers. If they lose this game 4, they're down 3-1. But when you say good pitching stops good hitting, the Dodgers have outstanding pitching themselves.
Yeah.
They have Clayton Kershaw going in game 4. And Clayton Kershaw, though, has really been spotty in the postseason. I know this year he's gotten off to a good start. He's won both his games. But these are the type of games that Clayton Kershaw really hasn't performed that great in throughout his postseason career. And they badly need him in this game 4 to pitch, a gem of a game and even the series. But with his back spasms and everything, I mean, we don't know what type of form he's going to be in. It's quite possibly he's pitching while he's still semi-hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know. I got a feeling that the Braves are going to do something because I guess it's the underdog, Jack. I'm a Yankee fan. I think you're a Yankee fan too. And when our teams don't get in there, it seems that a lot of people, they'll go for the underdog since their team isn't in there. And Atlanta, to me, was a huge underdog coming in, and that's why I guess I'm rooting for them. With the Dodgers have more of the machine, the more talented roster, and that's why I kind of hope the Braves beat the Dodgers.
I don't think Atlanta was so much looked as an underdog as the Dodgers were looked at as an exceptional team that was loaded, that had everything going for them. I think everyone acknowledged Atlanta was a very, very good team with excellent pitching. And, most people, even Dodger boosters, were giving Atlanta an outside chance in this.
Yeah.
They weren't discounting their chances altogether. So I think when you look at the Dodgers season, 43 wins, 17 losses, they were favored to win the World Series going into the year. I picked them to win the World Series. And then they have the type of outstanding regular season they had. So I don't think it's anything negative on any other team. I think the Dodgers were given a little edge over every other team going into the year, with the possible exception of the Yankees. But we both saw minor holes in the Yankees that we were worried about that came to fruition. And I was thinking about the Yankees yesterday. They went on 5 games to Tampa Bay. What happens if Severino had been completely healthy and in form? He would have gone game 2 after Cole. Cole won game 1 against Tampa. And the Yankees did score some runs in game 2. And had Severino been in top form, we're talking about the Yankees having a 2-0 lead over Tampa Bay. And instead of losing to them in 5 games in the series, they would have won probably in 4 games. The way the series played out. So it's sometimes it's a little thing like one player gets injured and then the team gets eliminated in the playoffs. And then everyone is asking, well, what changes can we make to reassemble the team? But sometimes the best moves you could make are the ones that you don't. Sometimes it is better to stand pat. And, maybe that's the case with the Yankees with all the talk that's going on.
Yeah, I believe that we don't know, Jack, about Severino. I mean, he had an injury. We don't know how good he's going to be coming back. And Herman, I don't know what's going on with Herman, who they kind of had their sights set on for part of the rotation next year. But that's for next year, Jack. This year, right now, the Astros get on the board, Jack. They ended up scoring, I think it was, let me get you to the game here, was 4-3. Greinke delivers. Pitching, Javier, he shuts down the Rays in relief. Altuve kind of redeems himself with a big hit. And George Springer, Jack, he's from Connecticut, and I know his family through another person. He hit a monster shot, a 2-run home run, and it seems like Springer delivers in the clutch all the time for the Astros.
He does, but getting back to Altuve, he more than delivered a homer, an RBI double. He even fielded his position cleanly. The ball was hit him a couple of times. He made the clean throws, saying that the mental anguish of the bad throws was put behind them. And part of the story of that game was afterwards, okay, with Zach Greinke. Zach Greinke is a future Hall of Famer. He's going to get there. Okay, he's there already as far as I'm concerned. But Zach Greinke was complaining after the game that he normally, during the course of the season, wasn't allowed to pitch deep into games. He was taken out a little too soon. So he was happy he was able to go some innings yesterday. So that's a little bit of story, because we never realized how unhappy Zach Greinke was with the way he was being used by Dusty Baker. Now, the Astros are down 3-1. They are not coming back and winning the series. Put it out of your mind. Even if they should somehow win a game 5, Tampa Bay is just too good, too well-rounded. They're just flat out a better team than Houston, and Tampa Bay is going to the World Series. The question is whether they're going to play the Dodgers or the Braves.
And I agree with everything you said there, Jack. A lot of people are kind of happy to see the Astros down because of the cheating scandal, and they're kind of rooting against them. I don't think it matters. Besides the Houston fans, who they played this year, they would be rooting against them. And
CC Sabathia hates the Astros, and the other day he called Carlos Correa a clown. Which
right.
Carlos Correa, he acts like one. Let's face it. Instead of keeping his mouth shut about the scandal and letting it die down, he keeps periodically making remarks about it. Like when they won their last playoff series, Carlos Correa said this is redemption, after they beat the Oakland A's to move on. And what's he talking about, redemption? And CC Sabathia says he wants an apology for cheating, and he called Carlos Correa a complete clown. Which Carlos Correa has acted like one. Let's face it. He might be a nice, kind, sensitive man behind the scenes. I don't know him. But how he's acted, someone should sit Carlos Correa down and say, Carlos, don't talk about this. Because the more Carlos Correa talks about this and makes remarks, the more he puts his teammates in danger of getting thrown at.
That's very true.
Let alone himself.
That's very true. In other news, Jack, that I found, of course, there is no Thursday night football game today because of the COVID and the rescheduling. But Cam Newton is scheduled to rejoin the Patriots today. There are rumors that other Patriots may have the COVID virus, so we'll see where that goes.
Can I say a word about the COVID virus?
Go right ahead.
Okay, Nick Saban tested positive. That's been big news all over ESPN, watching it a little while ago. Tragically, in case people haven't heard, Fred Dean, a defensive tackle for the San Diego Chargers and the San Francisco 49ers from 1975 to 1985, I believe it was, the years he played. He tragically passed away. Now, Fred Dean's a Hall of Famer. He's in the Chargers all-time team. But when he went over to the San Francisco 49ers as a defensive tackle, he played a huge role in them winning a couple of Super Bowls.
No doubt. As
well. So tragically, Fred Dean, at age 68, died of the coronavirus. And it's another warning to all of us out there. I mean, take this very seriously.
Yeah, Jack.
Seriously with wearing masks, social distancing, and so on.
Yeah, Jack, I believe that the COVID virus for healthy younger people is less of a problem. But if you're older and you have respiratory problems and and stuff like that, you should be definitely more careful than the regular people, I think.
Well, younger people could pass it on to older people.
Very true, very true.
And they get affected too, younger people.
Very true.
You have to live your life.
Right.
Do what you have to do for the most part, but do it prudently, do it wisely,
Sure, definitely.
Wear a mask when you're in public or whatever, unless you're far away from someone. Look, if I'm going out to jog, I'm not wearing a mask while I'm jogging.
Right.
I keep a little mask in my pocket just in case someone walks up on me and I have to put it on for any reason.
Right, and you got to be smart about it, Jack. You got to be smart about it. Definitely.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield got injured a little bit last week, but he still plans to play against the Steelers. Huge game coming up. Baker Mayfield looks a lot better than he did last year, but I think the head coach this year is really pounding the ball with the running game, which helps out any quarterback. So he's scheduled to play, Jack. And Adam Gase says if there was misuse of Le'Veon Bell during the season, it's not relevant now. So there's Adam Gase.
Well, it's not relevant now. I mean, that's true. I mean, it's moved on. Anything Le'Veon Bell, let's face it, his tenure with the Jets isn't going to be looked on too fondly. And I don't think the way Adam Gase is going, his isn't going to be either.
Right.
You know, but the Jets have become, quite honestly, boring.
Yeah.
They're 0-5. I'm a Jet fan. And if there's another game going on, let's say Sunday, I don't know the exact schedule, the time. I believe the Jets play the 4 o'clock, a little after 4 against the Miami Dolphins. But for example, if the Cleveland-Pittsburgh game was going on at that time, am I going to want to watch the Jets in Miami at Cleveland-Pittsburgh? Now, being a Jet fan, I'll probably watch the Jet game because you have to stick with your team even when they're down. You can't just be your front runner. But the Jets with Joe Flacco, who really is just going to dump passes off, who can't stretch the field, can't really throw long anymore. I mean, and the Jets don't have much of a running game on top of it, and the receiver cores are wanting, and the offensive line isn't anything to talk about. It's like, wow. I mean, we're not getting any closer to being a contending team. It's one thing you're losing, but the building blocks in place to be better. I don't see the Jets are like treading water.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. I mean, I'm wrong on this. I want to be proven wrong.
I know he got a question. He had to answer it. And the questions coming at Adam Gase now are coming hot and furious at him about his moves and the team and everything. But when somebody asks you, did you not use Le'Veon Bell? Did you misuse him? I would have just came back as a coach, Jack, and said the whole team right now is not playing well. And, Le'Veon Bell is just one of those members of the team that wasn't playing well. And right now we got a lot of work to do. So I would even came back and said it's irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. They're asking him why he used Le'Veon Bell the way he used them. And, of course, Le'Veon Bell's been hurt and the line, I mean, he's ducking as soon as he's getting the ball because the defensive line is on him. There's a lot bigger problems in the Jets than one running back. And maybe if he addressed that and maybe took a little ownership of that, maybe this wouldn't be as much news as it is about one player. And I think, Jack, when you're talking to the press, you just got to be honest. And a lot of head coaches just say we stink right now. And they're being honest. We stink. And, I mean, that's not a headline. But when they're going to try and bring Le'Veon.
Playoffs. You want us to go to playoffs?
Right.
Playoffs?
Right. I mean,
you know what I mean?
I mean, how many head coaches?
Joe Judge, you're still.
I mean, how many head coaches like Parcells and Ditka, and even if they're winning and they lose a game, just say we stunk. And I mean, that answers all the questions, and it kind of makes you take ownership of what your team is. And that's one of the things I hated about Pat Shurmur. He would always say, "Oh, we're getting really good in practice. We're having great practices." Yeah, but you're playing terrible. Just own it, man, and we're working on it. And I think that would maybe not stop the press from asking questions, but not to put a spin on it that makes him look like an arrogant guy.
The Giant game.
Yes.
Joe Judge went ballistic over something, and I did too. The Giants should have beaten the Cowboys. They had 2 touchdowns called back on penalties. Now, sometimes a touchdown wouldn't have taken place if it wasn't for the penalty. If a defensive player wasn't held, there wasn't a clip on a punt return or so on. But out of the 2 touchdowns, the one that drove me absolutely crazy, and I don't know how I would have dealt with it if I was a coach. Joe Judge went ballistic. I did too, just as a viewer.
Right.
Okay, the Giants fake a field goal. and they throw it for a touchdown. You can only get to do that once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Catch the opposition napping like that, because once you do it one time, all the other teams watch the game films. They're going to be alert to that.
Right. I agree.
Something like that, maybe once or twice a year, catch the opposition asleep. They caught the Cowboys asleep. It was beautiful. And it's called back because one of the players, I should have jotted down his name. I want to delete him from my memory. I think that's why. Didn't get down on his stance the correct way.
Right.
Fundamental, not getting down, in the stance. So they called a flag on him for that, and it was called back.
Right.
The Giants had to kick a field goal. They got 3 points out of that instead of 7. And the touchdown that was called back later on the pass in the end zone, instead of a touchdown, they went a field goal. So that's 8 points that they left on the board. And that was the difference between, winning and losing the game.
Yeah. I mean, Jack, but that stuff happens a lot in games, and the penalties at certain situations. I mean, teams get penalties, and it stops drives, it stops scores. But you know something? Then you lost the game. Dallas didn't really win. And most times in football, Jack, and really in any sport, the other team really doesn't beat you. You end up losing the game. As Bill Belichick said, 80% of the time, you're losing the game. That other team's not winning because you make those mistakes. So, I mean, live and learn. Giants got Washington this week, and we'll talk about that upcoming later this week. The NFL, Jack, has canceled the Pro Bowl, and I say, who cares, and thank you. I mean, because of the COVID. And thank you that they
glorified game of flag football. That's
my God.
Pro Bowl is. Listen, no one wants to get hurt to Pro Bowl. I mean, they go to Hawaii, they have their vacation, all the players get to mingle with one another and so on. And it's like the kids again. It's like, and listen, most of the NFL players, let's say there was no NFL, they would meet Sundays anyway, not for a tackle game of football, to play two-hand touch, because they really do love the game. And the reason most of the athletes do what they do is because of love of the game. They don't decide as kids that they're going to make a fortune of money and they're going to do this as a career because it's like a good business, a good profession to go into per se. They really love the game. And the ultimate is, becoming a professional athlete in the sport. That's as far as you could take it. So they keep playing through childhood until eventually they're told they can't play or they're not allowed to play anymore at a high level. Everyone gets cut at one time or another. Even the kids you never heard of, how they get cut from teams is the message is sent to them. They're just not good enough to take the next step. So their dream of becoming a Major League Baseball player, football, NBA, hockey, or whatever, eventually they give up on it because they see it's not going to the ultimate step.
Yeah, Jack, Linda wrote a great article on the kids moving up through college and through professional sports, where only 3% of the best high school players in the country end up getting scholarships, and out of those college players that do go to the pros, only 3% of them make the NFL. And we're not talking about make the team, but just get a shot, get drafted or signed. And I think a lot of parents, and this is basically what the article was about, on traveling teams where they specialize in one sport and stuff like that, where the parents are kind of paying for these traveling soccer teams or these traveling baseball teams, and how they're concentrating now in one sport, where at one time when I was growing up, Jack, I not only played football, I played baseball, I swam, I did a lot of different sports, and I think a lot of kids, kind of because of the parents, they kind of push them into one sport. I don't think that's good for the kids. And really, it's a dream. It's like winning the lottery. It's hard to become a professional anything in sports.
Well, there are ethnic issues involved, and I'm not talking about racism, not at all. Kids who come from a lower income family, their parents can't afford to send them for tennis lessons, which cost a lot of money, ice skating lessons, which cost a lot of money, and so on. So the cheapest thing to actually do is just have a basketball. One basketball, a few kids could keep playing day after day. They have the parks, they have the hoops, and it's very cheap. The same way with having a basic football. You have one
Right.
football, you can go out to the field. Now you start going to baseball. It's a little more expensive. You need a good quality glove. You need some baseball, some bats. So it all depends, really on the particular sport that you have. But maybe basketball is so popular in the inner cities because all you need is the one ball.
Sure.
All
It's the
you
same.
really need, and it's going to last a while too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's the same thing with soccer, Jack. I mean, that's one of the, the simplest games. You set up, you get a bunch of kids on a
exactly.
field, or and put the garbage cans for goals, and this is why in the poorer countries, they end up soccer is
Playing soccer.
huge. Yeah. So anyway, the Pro Bowl. Back to the Pro Bowl for a second, Jack. It's like every All-Star game now. At one time, they played it for real. I mean, Pete Rose and all these other people that went
Well,
ahead
that's
and
baseball. That was
yeah. Well, I'm just talking about
pride,
I'm just talking about all the All-Star games, basketball, baseball, football. It's not played seriously anymore. At one time it was, and that was by all sports where they actually had pride in the American versus the national, or one league against another. That's kind of gone now, Jack. It's kind of just, we're going to go out, we're going to have fun, and that's it.
Well, it happened years ago when Bud Selig, when he was the commissioner, an All-Star game went into extra innings. They called it a tie. And Pete Rose was beside himself, as a spectator being banned from baseball, a tie. In the past, they wanted to win that game so bad, both leagues, American League against the National League.
Right.
Maybe it's interleague play now, but we don't have that rivalry of American League versus National League. Not at all. I mean,
yeah. I think, Jack, it has a lot to. I think it has a lot to do with what you said in the beginning. The owners pay a lot of money now for these players, these all-star players, and they don't want them going and playing and getting hurt in some game that really has no relevance during the year. But it does. It is a shame for the fans, because I used to enjoy the All-Pro football game, or the All-Star baseball and basketball games where they really took the game seriously. So I mean, it kind of sucks for the fans, but I can see why the owners don't want their players going down there to begin with. And if they do go down there, please don't get hurt.
Listen, years ago when they first introduced tennis to the Olympics, Chris Everett, who was in the prime, who'd won, a number of big tournaments, was asked what winning the Olympics would mean compared to Wimbledon. And she said, well, in some ways it would be as big as winning Wimbledon. In some ways,
right.
Weren't the Olympics, an Olympic gold medal, supposed to be the ultimate thing for an athlete? Yet commercialism, and everything, and certain awards and certain honors are just kind of made secondary. I mean, you never would have thought an athlete would say winning an Olympic gold medal isn't that great? I mean, I heard Jason Kidd gave away his Olympic gold medal. He was on the United States team for a couple of times.
Yeah.
And also, some of the athletes elect not to even go to the Olympics because it messes up their season, that they're tired and so on, and they'd rather have the time off. So you kind of wonder where priorities, went.
Right. And real quick before we get to the bottom of the hour, there was a game that the NFL used to play years ago, and it was when the Super Bowl or championship team won. The NFL, they played the college all-star team.
Yeah.
And you don't see. I mean, I thought I was a kid. I think the last one was the Steelers when they destroyed the All-Stars, and it was a thunderstorm that came in, and they didn't finish the game, and that was it for that kind of scrimmage. But there was a time where people really enjoyed watching that game, and the college All-Stars, believe it or not, did beat the championship and Super Bowl teams. Not Super Bowl, but the championship teams. It could have been Lombardi's Super Bowl team too, and Lombardi held it over the Green Bay Packers all spring training at that college All-Stars beat them. But in that case, Jack, you had professional football players working on the off season. They didn't work out year round with the team. And you had the college all-stars that played football constantly. So it was more even way back when.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The year after they won the Super Bowl, they barely hung on to beat the college all-stars. Like 26-24, I think the score was. And I remember the Jets were really faltering at the end. And but you make a good point. The NFL champion, that's their first game. That was their first game. And they weren't really in shape. It was like training camp and so on. And the college all-stars were much more motivated. Plus, the college all-stars were future NFL players, were the guys who were drafted and so on. So it meant a lot more to them to have an introduction to their NFL career, to knock off the NFL championship team. And the NFL champions usually were just going through the motions.
Yeah, and again, Jack, it's not like today where it's a 365-day-a-year job. They didn't make enough money to, play football and not work on the off season. That's why training camp was such a big thing. And in the Steelers in that last game, I'm not sure if it was 75 or what it was the last game, but they ended up really beating them up, and that's when the football players started getting the bigger contracts, and they could not, they could afford not to work on the off season. But it was a fun game, and that's something else in sports where it's moved on to a new thing and things get lost, and I kind of reminisce about stuff like that. So anyway, go ahead, Jack.
No, I'm saying like the face of sports has changed in like so many ways. I don't know why when you're talking the way things changed. I was thinking of Wrigley Field. They only played games in the daytime and so on.
Right.
I mean, things evolve in life, and a boxing show. What someone's probably going to mention today is all the different titles out there, how much better things were before when we had only one title. And things evolve, things change, and we kind of have to go with the flow, whether we like it or not. Some things have changed for the better, some for the worse. So, we have to just make the best of it.
That's very true, very true. So, in a minute, I know we got Joe backstage right now. We're just waiting on Iceman John Scully to join us. We do have our boxing special today, Jack, and I'll bring Joe on and we'll talk a little bit, and hopefully John can get up here too. And we got a big fight coming up. We got a lot of news in boxing, so let's bring Joe up. Joe not only is Philly's voice reporter, but he is also currently the president of the Boxing Writers Association. So he's got to be really excited about probably the biggest fight coming up of this year, Joe, when we got Lomachenko against Lopez. So how we doing?
Tell Joe, I know I made an announcement about social distancing and wearing masks with society. And I know Joe likes to listen to me normally, but he's taking it to another level. Joe, you don't have to wear the mask. Someone's right next to you now.
I'm in my office, so I have to keep up the protocol. Okay. So I have to, I have a suit and tie on. I don't want to shock anyone.
Joe, I thought that was a beard you had going on there, goatee first when you came in.
No, I got my thing working here a little bit.
All right, that's
a little gray, but.
Joe, Joe, you know what my cap on? You know the cap I have on, right?
Oh my God, the Loma cap from the BWA dinner.
Right. That's Joe. So let's get to the point. Who are you picking? Vasily Lomachenko or Teofimo Lopez?
You know what? I'm going to go out on a very major limb here. I'm going to go Lopez by knockout.
Wow.
I want to go Lopez by knockout, and I base that on. And I've admittedly drank the Kool-Aid here. I spent time with Lopez. Spent 3 hours with him. 3 hours with him a month ago in his training camp, and got to spend some more time with him individually over the phone. So I've been heavily embedded, we'll say, with the Lopez crew, and I have a good feeling about what they'd like to do. I like a couple things here. First off. And I think Jack would admit this. And I think, Jack, you were there. You were there the night Linares knocked down Lopez at the Garden in the 6th round.
Lomachenko.
Knocked down Lomachenko in the 6th round, yeah. And my thinking here is this, and then we see it. We see Lomachenko getting hit more. We saw him certainly get hit by Linares and getting knocked down. We saw him getting hit more by Luke Campbell. We saw him getting hit more by Pedraza. Now, just imagine if this kid hits you, and that's my point. Is Lopez, I think, carries far more power than any of those guys, than Lopez. I'm sorry, than Pedraza, than Luke Campbell, and Linares. And my feeling is this, that if Linares can knock down Lomachenko, I don't see him getting up from a Lopez punch, from a devastating left hook from Lopez. And we saw what Lopez can do against Richard Comey in December of last year when he stopped him in the second round. I mean, I thought Lopez could win. I picked him going into that fight, but I just didn't think he would win as dominantly as he did.
Hey,
So
Joe?
Yes.
Joe, let me interrupt you. We have the Iceman John Scully joining us too right now. He's in the shadows right now. I don't know if you get some light on yourself there, John, for us. But John Scully is in the show with us right now. So go ahead, Joe. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, yeah, I see all those factors there, and I got a chance to speak to some really esteemed experts. I think, Jack, you would agree. Steve Farhood. I spoke to Brian McIntyre yesterday. Stephen Breadman Edwards. I spoke at length with Derek James, and these guys know far more about the game than I do, and they all give Lopez a viable chance to beat Lomachenko. Again, Lomachenko's the favorite. I won't dispute that. And the thing that I found interesting, too, in the way they were putting the examples they were using, and I use the example, I'll use the baseball analogy. Hitting Lomachenko is like hitting a knuckleball. You know, he's here, he's there, he's all over the place. He's in front of you, he's behind you, he works the angles.
Good analogy.
But here's the other thing, too, and Brian McIntyre made a great point. He goes, one punch in the chest stops that. Now, granted, it's going to maybe take some time to hit him, but one punch in the chest, one heavy punch in the chest, has a tendency to slow a lot of people down. That's one. The example Steve Farhood used was exchanges and the number of exchanges. Lomachenko, well, obviously you win fights by connecting. You win fights by hitting the other guy with the possibility of not being hit. But anytime you step into that punching zone, you're going to you have the chance of being hit, and there's a strong chance that Teofimo Lopez is going to tag Lomachenko once or twice, and I think my feeling here is this. If Lopez can hurt him, and I think if Lopez can seriously hurt him, I think he has a chance to shock the world, and I think he has a chance to stop him. And again, like I said, I'm sticking my neck out and going out big with this, but I can see Lopez stopping Lomachenko.
Joe, very quickly.
Hold on one second, Jack. Hey, Iceman, you got to mute your mic. Your mic's not connected, so we can hear you. If you go down at the bottom, you'll see mute on the board. Just see if you can hit that because your microphone isn't connected right now, John. And go ahead, Jack.
Okay, Joe, very quickly before we bring John in, who probably knows more about boxing than any of us, here in this panel. No disrespect, sorry, Joe and Mac, but I'm picking Lopez to stop Lomachenko late in the fight because I think it's a question. He's moving into the eye of the cannon. Okay,
You're on, John.
I guess Lomachenko, for all his great angles, and you make a great point about it. It's like hitting a knuckleball in baseball. He's all over the place. It's going to be there and hurt Lopez during the fight. And sooner or later, Lopez is going to get off the big blows. Okay, and I think the point you brought up about Lomachenko slipping a bit is there. Against Jose Pedraza and Luke Campbell, even though he won decisively, it was a question of him just clearly winning rounds, not dominating rounds. The other guys would have their moments. they'd be much more competitive than Lomachenko's opponents had been in the past. And I just think Lopez's kind of time has arrived. This is not to say that Lopez would be someone like Devin Haney or Ryan Garcia, but Lomachenko is right there in front of him. I could see some slippage there, and I'm going to be going with Lopez. I've said it all along.
Hey, Jack, Jack, let's get John in. John, who do you got in the big upcoming fight here between Lomachenko and Lopez? Who you think's going to win this?
Well, if I had to bet, I would go with Loma. The style and the peak and one thing you have to remember, like, I never go by, like, if a guy gets knocked down by someone else and they say, well, if the guy knocked him down, this guy hits much harder, because the mentality is so much different. And history is, you could give a million examples of a guy who got dropped by a 7th grade puncher and then took the best punches of a 10th grade puncher, a guy, a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, because mentally he's going to be much more aware and alert and ready for this kind of power. I think Lomachenko is going to be very, very prepared. He knows what it is. I think he's going to step his game up. The only thing for me is his age. Sooner or later, it's going to start to catch up with him. I don't know if this is it, but I do think he's going to step his game up. He's going to be really on his game and elevate it for this particular fight.
I think Joe and myself are picking, I think, Lopez based on potential more than what he's actually directly shown in the fight. I think Joe will agree. We're picking him based on what we think he's fully capable of doing and will do during the fight. I mean, obviously the body of work is there with Lomachenko. And sometimes you look for a certain fighter to have a big breakthrough fight. It's hard to pick him to beat an established opponent, but you see the potential there. Like you the other day, John, when you were on, you mentioned, I think James Toney beating Michael Nunn. Well, going into that fight, you may have had a feeling Toney had all the talent in the world and could beat a Michael Nunn, but the evidence wasn't there until he actually did it.
Right. Yeah, no, that's 100%. And I'm not a betting guy. I would bet on Loma, but I'm super confident. I think this is the most dangerous fight of his career. I think we could all agree on that.
Joe, what sense did you get being with the Lopez camp? Okay.
Oh, they're very, very confident. The thing that got me, I think the thing that struck me most, and I think you even saw it last night, and I wrote about it last night, when they met in the final presser, which is obviously an ESPN vehicle, dialogue, whatever. But I found it interesting that you see you see Lomachenko wearing this glare, and I'm familiar with, John fought in the ring. I was, before I became a bulbous bald man, I was an All-American wrestler. I know that glare. And that's a glare that I would wear maybe the night before a fight, or during a tournament, during a national tournament. It's a glare that I'm going to take you and your family out glare. But it's a glare that comes in time. It's a glare that comes near the event. And we're 3 or 4 days out. And I found it interesting that Lopez last night was relaxed. When I spent time with him a month ago, he was incredibly relaxed. He felt very, very confident. The only thing that struck the emotional chord was when I saw him talking about his father. But the father-son relationship that I witnessed is still a very, very close bond. But he seemed to be really, really loose. He seemed to be very, very relaxed. And the guy that, I'm going to go here with this. Lomachenko almost looked as if he was constipated last night. He just had this look on his face like he was.
Well, he didn't want to be there. He had to be there.
I know, and I see that. But, there's a way you could turn around and you can either have one or two choices. Either you can control your environment, which I think Lopez did a far better job of last night than Lomachenko, or you can let your environment control you. And I think Lomachenko let the environment control him.
Well, Joe, I'm going with Lomachenko just like John is. I think Lomachenko is far more experienced. You can see how he looks and all that good stuff. But Lomachenko's been there for years. He's 396 and one as an amateur boxer, one of the greatest amateur boxers of all time. He's a great fighter. And can this be too soon for Lopez to go up against this much of an experienced fighter? Do you think maybe he should have took on a couple more fights before he went up on this experienced boxer like this?
No, I think if he doesn't face Comey, and well, as I stated earlier, I thought he had a chance to beat Comey, but I think the way he beat Comey spoke volumes. Lomachenko calls it a lucky punch, and again, Scully's been in the ring. I don't think when you slam someone like that, I don't call that luck. I call that skill. The right place at the right time in the right situation, and there's there could be quite a bit of luck coming Saturday night for Lopez. But I don't blow it off as luck. I blow it off as skill and ability and timing. I think Joey Camacho is a big key to this. He's in Lopez's corner. And the other beauty of this, and it's something, again, I wrote about, is Joey Camacho was in Lomachenko's corner for 2 fights. So he knows what Lomachenko can do. He was up close and personal with Lomachenko. So it's an interesting secret weapon that Team Lopez has taken in here with this fight. And it's always nice to know what the enemy can do. Joey Camacho, and talking to Joey about this, Joey felt as if, again, Lopez's timing is good. It's accurate. The other thing that he says about Lopez is that he has far more boxing skills than I think any of us have seen. And I saw a little bit of a glimpse of that being up in training camp with Lopez. We will see more of that possibly Saturday night. But again, the big key to me is Lomachenko looks and obviously appears to be getting hit more as a 135-pounder. And again, I questioned whether or not if Lopez can hit him the way Linares hit him, I don't think he's getting up.
John, hold on a second, Jack. John, what do you think about that? Do you think Lopez is rushing it, fighting a guy with the experience of Lomachenko right now? Do you think maybe he should have waited a few more fights to going up against this great boxer?
Not necessarily. I mean, I've always been taught when you get a shot at a big fight like this, you take it. This is your opportunity, and they're giving it to you, and you take it. One thing I'll say though, just in getting into a boxing technique type of thing, I never really take into account like say for example, a guy gets dropped by someone else. Like we're saying with Lomachenko getting dropped. I don't think that because he got dropped against Linares that it means as much as it appears. And I'll give you the perfect example. Thomas Tate went 12 rounds with the biggest puncher maybe in history, Julian Jackson, and gave him a good fight. Like, it was a good fight. He took the shots. Thomas took the shots pretty well. Definitely a million times better than anybody else did other than Gerald McClellan. Then he fights Roy Jones, and he gets knocked out brutally in 2 rounds. Now, at the time, Julian is the biggest puncher on the planet. But part of it is mentality. Like when you go into when Thomas Tate went into the fight with Julian Jackson, he knew what he was going in with. He was going in with the most vicious puncher ever. And his brain was ready for that. Then when he fought Roy Jones, and I was there, he had no respect for Roy. He was really talking trash to Roy. He had lost to Roy as an amateur. And he went in with just carelessness almost, which was foolish. And Roy obliterated him with a shot. So my point is the mentality was totally different. I was at the Linares fight. It came out of nowhere. Lomachenko was in control. He was boxing. He was taking his time. He just got caught, and he went down, and he got up and, like, stopped him. I don't know if it was the same round or the next round. So my point is,
3 rounds later.
he's going to go into this fight much more mentally prepared for a puncher. So I don't think that we could use the Linares knockdown as an indication of anything. I think mentally, Lomachenko is extremely smart. He's extremely high tech, mentally and physically. And so I wouldn't really, if I was going to bet, I wouldn't use that knockdown as much of an.
John, what Lomachenko has been in the ring so many times in his life. When you talk about his amateur career, it's nearly second nature. Okay, so I can't imagine him being that nervous for any particular fight because he's done it so many times at a high level. And when I talk about a high level, I mean a lot of big amateur contests as well, where he had a lot of pressure on him. What goes through Lopez's head, and what might go through his head if Lomachenko just races off to a big lead and is completely dominating after a few rounds? Now, we know Lopez has the big punch, so he's never out of the fight. What happens to Lopez mentally if Lomachenko really dazzles the first few rounds?
Right. Well, you know, the thing is, no matter what a fighter says, oh. Are you asking me?
I'm asking you, John, because Joe's
okay, yeah.
Primarily
So
as a wrestler, I box as an amateur,
right.
You box as a high level as a pro. You'd know the most.
Right. So, you know, the thing is, when you go into these fights,
Lopez, if Lomachenko is dominating early in the fight, does reality set in a sense? Does he think to himself, do I really belong here?
Yeah.
And does he think, maybe I have been hyped up, maybe I don't belong in this level? Because until a guy like Lopez actually does it at the highest level, and I don't mean winning a sanctioning body belt, but beats an elite star, he has to have just a little bit of doubt in the back of his mind whether he really belongs here or not.
I can see Lopez getting frustrated.
That's human nature.
I can see Lopez getting frustrated.
Okay, guys.
John,
wait a minute.
Right.
Jack.
Here's my thing.
John has a little delay, so you got to give him a second to answer the question before you move on. So go ahead, John.
Okay, so what I'm saying is 100% when these guys go into these fights, there's always going to be a question. No matter how confident they are, no matter how confident they appear, there is a question in their head. And it's like going swimming. I always use it like the equation of going swimming. And you don't know if it's warm or not. So you put your foot in a little bit. Okay, this is not bad. I can handle it. Sometimes you turn around and you go the other way because it's way colder than you thought it was. I think he's gonna Lopez is gonna have to feel Lomachenko's power, gauge his speed and slickness, and he's gonna figure out for himself very quickly if he feels like he belongs or not. He could possibly say this guy's too good. You know, guys did it with Roy Jones. They did it with Muhammad Ali a million times where they thought and they believed it. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they got in there and they said, this is unlike anything I've ever seen. I'm not on this level. I can't reach this guy. He's doing something to offset me. So we don't know. I would say Lomachenko has faced many more Lopez fighters than Lopez has fought Lomachenko. It's going to be hard to even prepare mentally and physically in the gym to get a guy to spar with. But you know, it depends on Lopez. I think, you know, he could come out and hit a groove early on, and he may say to himself, wow, you know, this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. This isn't as bad as everybody told me it was going to be. And maybe he'll hit his stride. Who knows? You know, he may have his number. And, you know, it happened with Lloyd Hunnigan and Donald Curry. Nobody saw that coming. You know, regardless of weight issues or whatever, nobody saw that coming. And I'm sure in a certain way, Hunnigan was the most surprised guy in the building when he realized he was gonna take down Donald Curry, and you know what I mean. So it's a lot of it's gonna depend on how Lopez reacts to Lomachenko in the first couple rounds.
And let me ask Joe something about being close to the Lopez camp. Is Teofimo Lopez under a little extra pressure because of his dad, who trains him? His dad is talkative. Is getting his dad's approval by winning this fight? Is that just as important as just beating Lomachenko outright for the glory?
I don't think so. It's kind of a shame. He said something very poignant last night, talking about that difference between my father being a father, my father being a trainer. I think there has been some strain on the relationship. I think it's still, obviously, it very much matters what his father does say, and his father has very, very serious input. But I think the feeling I get from the kid is, and I also found this interesting, again, when I was up there, and I wrote about it. That was the lead story on the ring. It's still up. When I was up there that Monday, the kid was tired, a little bit worn down. I don't know what he was doing the night before. And the father said, yeah, listen, why don't you, take a nap, come back. I mean, he already had put in a full day. He had spoken to, as a matter of fact, I just got a hold of him after about a 2.5 hour session with an ESPN crew. And then he had what was promised to be supposed to be 20 minutes with a Mexican sports station, wound up being 40 minutes. And then he was gracious enough to give me about 20 minutes to a half an hour before we spoke again a little bit later. But again, he was tired. He was a little bit run down. And it was interesting that the father almost as if the father was babying him, pampering him. Listen, take it easy. We'll come back, take a nap. And it was Teofimo, the son, that said, you know what? No. I'm tired because guess what? I'm going to be tired in that ring. I'm not going to get any breaks. This guy's not going to cut me any breaks. I'm going to work through this. I'm going to work through this BS. I'm going to work through dealing with these jackasses, obviously including myself as a media person. I'm going to work all through this. And he did. He got in the ring. He did work. Within minutes, he worked up a great sweat. And to me that said something. Whereas the father was like, oh, okay, listen, take it easy a little bit. But it was the kid that was pushing. It was Teofimo, the son, that was pushing him, wanted to push through. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic because, again, and you guys would all know this with old school stuff, it's going to be the coach, whether he's your father or not, they're going to be the ones that push. They're going to be the ones that try to push you forward. And this was a interesting switch where, again, the father was the one saying, hey, take it easy, let's come back. And it was the son saying, no, I want to get in the ring. I want to work.
Hey, guys, we're gonna have to cut it off for now. We got some commercials coming up. Then we're gonna go into Majeski and Mr. Rappaport and do it. And great, thank you guys for coming on.
Guys. Good stuff.
Yeah, Iceman will have you on hopefully back next week for your boxing show.
Hey, listen, is there a way I can watch? Because I'm interested to say what those guys have to say about
all you got to do, sir, is go to at MacMan62. It's Facebook. Search @Man62 brings you to Mac's sports page, and you'll be able to watch the two boxing historians we got coming up next, which will be
at MacMan62.
Yeah, MacMan62 Facebook. Again, Iceman, thank you for coming in. We appreciate you coming in every week. You're a great guest, and thank you, Joe, for coming in. So we'll see you. We'll see you guys later, and thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Okay, Jack, we're gonna go to a real quick commercial. I know we got Dennis waiting backstage right now, and hopefully we get Mr. Majeski in here soon, and we'll really quickly go to this commercial, and we'll be right back, folks. And thank you for tuning in. This is a great show.
We'll be right back soon. Don't go away.
We will. We definitely will.
Come right back.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Let me get to it. So within a stretch. And Yeah, this is me still trying to learn how to work the board, Jack. You
We
know?
on the air now?
Yes, sir. So let's go to commercial. We'll be right back with Dennis and Mr. Majeski.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too. Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Now we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
So I'm going to bring us back in here, Jack. And if I can, let me see here. I'm always have fun with this, Jack. I'm always trying to learn how to do this. It's always a fun thing for me to learn how to work this board. But up next, we've got the great Dennis Rappaport, Don Majeski, who are coming up and going to be.
And good. I saw Byron Williams here. I thought, wow, I had to put my football. I didn't think Byron.
Yeah, right.
I know I don't always pay attention to you, Mac, but I was taking it to another level. If you were going to have Byron Williams on, and I wasn't listening to you,
Right.
I'm nervous there.
Yeah, exactly. So Dennis has left for right now,
Dennis is great. Don is great.
Yes, sir. So we should have both hopefully coming on here in a second as you see the blank screen right now for Dennis. And hopefully he comes back on. There, his cam is off. So if he can click on his cam at the bottom, Cam and Mike, maybe. Let's see. We got Dennis. I think he's on. At the bottom, Dennis, you have a mute mic. You see the microphone. If you hit that, it will unmute you. And there, he's unmuted now. And all we need him to do is hit that stop cam thing at the bottom, and he'll come in. So I don't know why it's
I've touched the cam button.
Right. Did it?
And prior to this, I saw a reflection of myself, and I was seeing you guys.
Right. So
I'm just wondering what
you have. Try and hit that stop cam, that little thing at the bottom there, and see if that brings you in, Dennis.
Which
well, you see that you see the mute, and then you have stop cam there, and right now you're on black screen. I don't know how that happened.
Okay, when you say the mute button,
right. Right. You see at the bottom you have a microphone with mute. That's fine. Next to it has a stop cam. If you hit that, hopefully that brings you in.
That's why the Mac.
Let me hit the cam button and let's see what happens.
Technology also.
There's a circle and says Dennis, on
top
of that.
Right. So how about the next with the settings, cam and mic? Hit that button and see if that does anything for you.
It says settings, cam, and audio.
Okay. Do you on the cam? If you hit that, see if that brings you in, please.
The camera or the audio?
Yeah, the cam. Your audio is fine, Dennis.
Okay. I hit the camera. It says front camera.
Okay, so it ain't working for you. Can you do me a favor, Dennis? I hate to do this to you. Could you go back out and hit that link again and see if it brings you in? Because we're having problems with the camera right now. I mean, we can talk to you, but we can't see it. I'd rather see that.
Okay, let me sign off and sign back in, you mean, basically.
Yeah, just sign off and go right back to the link and try and bring it back.
Dennis, if your wife's around, have her help you out. I do that with mine. Okay?
Okay, we'll check this out.
Me out always.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay, we'll try to get right back on.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks.
So Jack, yeah. So we don't have Don yet. He hasn't signed in yet. I'll see
He's
if
sleeping late again. Don's an international agent.
Right.
I was telling you before the show, he works 24 hours a day. At
Right.
4 in the morning. Okay.
Right. So, well, hopefully he signs out by. And he'll come backstage, and if I see him, I'll bring him back on, whether or not. At least we can hear him and talk to him. But hopefully he goes back to the email, clicks on that link again, which is still good, and comes back and enters studio.
Until Dennis comes back, I'll talk a little about him. For those who are not aware, I mean, he's had an amazing career in boxing. He's a member of the New York State Boxing Hall of Fame. He managed Jerry Cooney. He promoted Tim Witherspoon. He promoted George Foreman when George Foreman was on the comeback trail. He managed Howard Davis Jr., the outstanding boxer of the 1976 Olympics. Another gold medalist who he brought out of the scrap heap and got a title shot for was Ronnie Harris. Oleg Moskayev was a down-and-out heavyweight, and Dennis took over his career and led him to a major world title belt. See, he's done some amazing things, really, in the sport of boxing as both a manager and as a promoter. And he has a lot of great stories, and he has a lot of great insights. Plus, I never realized until the last few years, Dennis is extremely knowledgeable on boxing history. He loves these trivia questions and so on, and he comes out with some really hard ones where, admittedly, very few of us know the answers to.
Yeah. I mean, to have these two people, these two experts coming in is going to be great. Again, trying to get a hold of Majeski right now, and we're going to voicemail at this present time. Are you still there, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying to get back on. It's
Okay.
I got my wife taking a look at it now. It's
Okay. Yeah. You probably.
Mac and Jack show. There's a couple of them. And
Yeah,
there's a little-
you probably would have to go to your email again, back to your email. Just come off the show, click off the email, go back into your email, and click back on the link, and hopefully we can get you back on. Now you would have to go back to the beginning, and I think that's how we could get you back on. Either that, we could just talk to you. So either way you want to do it.
And Don, has there been communication with Don? Because I could call him now.
Yeah, we did try to call. He's right now. He's at. We're getting voicemail, so maybe he's trying to work it out. So yeah, if you can call him, it'd be great, Jack, and maybe you'll get through where we would. Okay, so this is live radio, folks, as live as you can get. So we'll see if we could get Dennis. He's got to remove himself from. Click off the show itself out of the email and come back in through the email. So Jack. So.
We're in the early stages of this show, Mac.
I know.
Like, this doesn't go on at ESPN, the Fox network at this time. I mean, we have basically a 3-person crew. You, myself, you have Linda, the production manager, who does a great job. Keeps the site, does everything behind the scenes. So if my wife encourages me with good ideas, on. But we have a little ways to go.
Definitely.
We'll get there.
Definitely. So it looks like we got, let's see, we got Don Majeski has come in.
Don, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing today, Don?
Hi, Dr. Mac. Fine, thank you.
I'm glad you could make it. Dennis is right now is kind of in limbo as we're trying to get him on. Let me see if he's still there. Dennis, can you hear us still? No, maybe not. So we'll hopefully,
all right.
Hopefully we get Dennis back in here and we'll start talking. Let's get to the main question. We're excited about this big fight coming up, Dennis, between Lomachenko and Lopez.
Don. Now,
I mean, sorry,
Lomachenko
Don.
and Teofimo Lopez, but
right. And who do you like, Don, coming up in this fight?
Well, I like Lomachenko. I think he's the experienced fighter. He doesn't have a lot of bouts professionally, but of course he has that tremendous amateur career with 400 matches.
Right.
He's got everything. He's a boxer, a puncher. He's great defensively. Offensively, of course, he's not a match for Lopez with that explosive power, but he seems to be a consummate fighter, and I think he'll find a way to win. He just is, his natural reactions, his instincts are just phenomenal. But it's a great fight. If this other guy knocks him out, I'm not going to say, oh, my goodness, it's impossible to believe that happened. It's one of those fights that you can't pick a winner. It's great. I personally like Lomachenko, but it doesn't mean Lopez can't flatten him. And I'm not trying to hedge here in case he loses that day, Don. I gave him a chance. A terrific fight, but I like Lomachenko.
Now, for those who don't know, Don is one of the foremost boxing historians in the world. And I've said this line before. Hall of Fame promoter from Philadelphia, Russell Pelt, said Don knows what shaving cream John L. Sullivan used, okay? Not that Don always gets it right. He still owes me a steak dinner from when Canelo Alvarez sold out the card.
Yeah. Bad miscalculation on my behalf.
He dazzled me with why it couldn't take place, giving me examples I didn't even know existed, but I guess the odds, for whatever reason, didn't come out his way that night. But Don actually, Mac, he was ringside in Zaire the night Ali knocked out George Foreman. Don was there in Zaire, Africa, sitting right behind the great Jim Brown, the football player who was doing boxing commentary. I love that photo, seeing Don behind the typewriter. He's sitting right behind Jim Brown.
That's some great stuff there. Great stuff, Jack. Hey, Don, I brought this up to Iceman Scully, and I brought this up to Joe Santo earlier. Do you think that maybe Lopez is moving a little too fast? I know he beat some just recently beat in his last 2 matches some really good ranked opponents, but Lomachenko is very experienced. Lopez is still pretty young, and do you think maybe he should have got maybe a couple more fights under his belt before he tried to go up against Lomachenko?
Well, the problem with that is he's already a world champion. You know, he's got a title. The guys move quickly in 10, 12, 13 fights. I mean, if you look at the other side, Lomachenko was a world champion in his second professional fight. So you could say, was he moving too fast to get a title? Today, you're a world champion very early in your career. He probably could have waited. Would the match been any bigger under these unique circumstances? The COVID, as you know, Jack and Mac, the fight was originally scheduled for Madison Square Garden, where it would have drawn 18,000 people. I predict that. I don't know if Jack agrees, but I think it was a great crowd. They had built it up. They both had fought there. They were winning. They had a fan base here, and it was an international match that would have attracted people from everywhere. And unfortunately, ironically, they had to fight without anybody in the arena. So he jumped at the opportunity. I don't think he's going to make the revenue he would have. But it was sort of, you don't make it now, you'll never make it. Look at the third fight with Wilder and Fury. Who knows? It's in limbo. It's going to take place at all. So at least we're going to have it. That doesn't mean that if he loses, he'll be able to come back. It's one loss on his career. He's a very young fighter. These guys could be fighting a couple of times in the course of their career, depending how long Lomachenko stays around. Should he win? Should he lose, then I'm sure there's going to be a rematch. I'm almost positive they have that kind of clause in their contract. So yeah,
well, Lopez couldn't get the clause done. I don't think he's got
they didn't.
that power.
Okay.
But Lomachenko, you would think could.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
but Don, wouldn't there be a problem? I haven't heard about the rematch clause
Mhm.
because Lopez is a really big kid. We
Mhm.
can't see him staying at lightweight much longer. He's going to
Mhm.
move up in weight
Yes.
to junior welterweight.
Yeah.
And Lomachenko's a small lightweight. He can drop down to junior lightweight. He's fighting at a division he's not a big man in. So as far as having a rematch, isn't time a factor with that? Because they're not going to be in the same weight divisions, for long.
Well, as to Mac's point again, well, should he have waited? This is probably a chance. Maybe he couldn't do the fight afterwards. Maybe he would have been in a different division. As Jack just said, one is going up in weight, the young fighter Lopez. The other guy has the ability to go down in weight, so they may never have had an opportunity to do this again. They would have been at different junctures in their weight classes. So I think they grabbed it to make sure it took place. So had they both had a little bit more, had at least Lopez had more experience, he might, maybe do better. We don't know what's going to happen. But yes, as Jack pointed out, they didn't fight now. They may never have boxed. So at least he's grabbed the opportunity.
That's a great point. And real quick, Don, you mentioned about Fury moving on from Wilder, and they're thinking about possibly fighting a guy he fought before, who was, and let me get the name right. It's Wallen.
Wallen.
Yeah, and Wallen really beat Fury up the first time. I think Fury got 50 stitches from that fight. It was a slugfest. Does he have to fight Wallen? Is it a choice? And is it a good idea that he goes and fights Wallen again?
Well, I think he pretty much has a choice to fight anybody. And I know it's sort of a sweepstakes. I know how this worked, that every heavyweight in the top 40, 50, 100 volunteered to fight Fury because the money is there. So like Tyson with the comeback with Jones, everybody wants to fight Tyson because the money is there. I don't think he's probably limited to a number of fighters. I mean, he just can't pick any heavyweight because of the television revenue, and they have to be somebody who's perceived to be competitive. And Wallen's a tough fight, as you said. He could have won that fight. It could have been the cut eye. They could have stopped it. So it's a viable rematch. Is it? I think if they fight again, I think he will be much better this time. Fury. He knows what he's got in front of him. So I don't think Wallen is written in stone, but it's a match that he's under contract where they can control him with Top Rank. So it's sort of an in-house match. I know he's with Dimitri Salita, who represents him previously with the Sauerlands. So they have to have some fight they can sell, because otherwise people perceive it, this is no kind of a tune-up. It's just a tune-up. It's not an important match. So they got to have at least the aura of their competitive nature. So while it's not restricted to Wallen, I think there's a selling point there because, as you said, the fight was so tough last time. But as Butcher Lewis once said to me, a tune-up turned out to be a tune-out. So you got to be very cautious. We have a mega fight in the offing. Who you take that tune-up, alleged tune-up with?
Well, Don said it best. Is a fight sellable? Now, Otto Wallen isn't on Tyson Fury's level. He's just not. Fury wasn't in shape last time, and he still won decisively on points, but he got cut so badly early in the fight that he was in serious danger losing the fight because of the cut. So there was suspense all fight. Are they going to stop it? Are they going to stop it? Are they going to stop it? Then the rounds managed to go by, and then Fury asserted himself. They meet in a rematch. Fury will be more ready. He's clearly better, should win without a tremendous fuss. Not that Wallen isn't a good, decent heavyweight. He's a decent heavyweight, but Fury's an exceptional one. But you can sell the fight.
Yeah.
You can sell the fight because of the cut, because of how close Fury actually came to losing the fight because of a cut. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Rocky Marciano as a Charles II fight when Marciano's nose was cut so badly where there was talk they were going to stop it the next round, but then he knocked Charles out. We'll never know whether they would have stopped that fight or not. But you can sell it. And Don, that's the business Don's in. As an international agent, is your job basically to sell fights. You know, you have to convince the public that one guy can win.
Yes, George Parnassus, an ex-promoter, had a couple of sayings, and one was, what can you write about? You got to write about the opponent. And here the hook is sort of like when Joe Louis fought Buddy Bear. He got knocked out of the ring, he came back, and then he won the fight in disqualification when Bear's corner wouldn't get out of the ring and kind of crazy stuff. So they sold it in the rematch. Lewis knocked him out in 1 round. Or when he fought Godoy, it went 15 rounds. So there's a hook, as Jack said. There's that cut. So there's the possibility of selling it. It's not like the great fights I refer to. A great idol of mine, promoter George Parnassus, and he said, you have a great fight when you ask the public 2 questions. They have to say yes to one and no to the other. Do you know these fighters? They have to say yes. Do you know who's going to win? They have to say no. He said, then you got the elements. Wallen, they know him, let's say, more than anybody, totally obscure fighter. And as Jack said, there's the hook to sell it on, the cut, what happened. So there's a little bit of interest in that, although there's probably another half a dozen heavyweights we get to. But it's not the end of the world if he fights Wallen. Tuning up for Joshua, which is going to be the mega fight of 2021.
Now you mentioned the live gate, Don, before. We don't have it right now. It's amazing that this Saturday's fight between Lomachenko and Lopez, if it was put on the Madison Square Garden the way they talked about originally, that would have sold the Garden now. You agree on that, right?
Yes, I agree 100%.
And it would have been an electric atmosphere, Now they're fighting in the MGM, and the talk is they're going to be 250 people there scattered. And how is that going to transcend, as far as the marketability of the fighters? Because if you knock out someone at Madison Square Garden and beat them decisively in front of that crowd, that gives you a heck of a boost for your career going forward. So just tell me about the atmosphere, how important that is.
Oh yeah, I think so. The electricity there. It's the studio fights that was predicted by Mike Jacobs 80 years ago that we'd be fighting in studios. You have that with wrestling now. I know in Maryland they're doing wrestling shows where there is nobody there but the fighters, and I know they used to have events Saturday afternoons in different places. I remember living in Albuquerque. They do the wrestling matches in a studio, maybe 20, 30 people, something comparable to this there. So it's got to hurt it. I'm just questioning. I know they're in the bubble, which is really not a bubble. It's the quarantine, more or less, to say how they have it all sealed off in the MGM and the hotel. And I just came back from Mohegan Sun for a show, and they did basically the same thing there. Why they couldn't have tried to do that in Madison Square Garden. I know the logistics, but what is the situation with boxing in the state of New York? Because in the Garden, if they're allowing, say, 20, 25%, even there, that's 3,000 people. That's not a bad little crowd. 3,500. You had some atmosphere, and I'm sure people would have paid for their eye teeth to see this fight in person. So they could have charged a very high ticket price. So I don't know why New York hasn't tried to pursue at least getting boxing back on some basis. We have a lot of big rings here, and we could accommodate people.
And Mac, one of the things that bothers me a lot, okay, I know it doesn't bother you as much as me, are these pay-per-view events, okay, Don? So many times they give you a good main event for pay-per-view, but not such a good undercard. I just don't feel the consumers getting true value for their money. What makes this Saturday night's show so special between Lomachenko and Lopez? It's going to be on regular ESPN.
Incredible.
The whole show. At 7:30, the whole undercard. We're going to go from about 7:30 to midnight or so. free boxing. What a great night of
Yeah.
entertainment.
Yeah.
What that you don't have to pay extra for through pay-per-view. And I think that's great for the sport.
Look, absolutely confirms one thing. It's a brilliant move on behalf of ESPN for their marketing and broadcasting and prestige. And it just reconfirms how that Bob Aaron's the greatest boxing promoter of all time. They managed to put this together. The fighters took a small cut. It's the biggest fight in boxing right now. And it's a fight that can transcend itself. So if you're a sports fan or just a moderately into person, not in boxing, but in sports, you'll turn it on. It's like if I'm not really a football fan, but I watch the Super Bowl. And if everybody starts talking, say, hey, this is the best fight in boxing, and it's free. Conversely, remember just a couple of weeks ago, they charged $75 for a Charlo fight. All right, he's a good fighter. People know who he is in the boxing world. No one knows him outside the boxing world. And they minimize any audience they could have got. This is going to make the biggest audience of the year, I think, on any event for ESPN. Super Bowl is free to air. The World Series is free to air. The Olympic gold medal matches are free to air. And this is something that's going to boost the rating of ESPN. In the short term, they may lose money, but I think it's a brilliant move. And I really think you got to thank Bob Aaron, the whole team at Top Rank, everybody there, Todd the Buff and Bruce Trampler and all the people there, Brad Jacobs, Lee Samuelson, everyone else. They're just the best team in boxing, the best promotion. And this is really going to turn things around. If this doesn't get the biggest rating, we got to close shop in the boxing industry. And it's going to expose two of the top fighters to a massive audience, where the next time they're on a pay-per-view, people will have seen them, and I think it's a tremendous thing. It's great for the fans. Hi,
Hey,
Dennis.
Don, let me welcome in Dennis. We finally got him, and he went black again on us. I don't know what's going. There he is. How you doing?
I'm
so
following
much,
out with you
Dennis.
guys.
Thought he'd get a cup of coffee or something.
And welcome Dennis into the show and a great boxing show we have today. And we talked to Don about this. We got the big fight, Lomachenko and Lopez coming up. Who do you give the favorite? Who's the favorite to win this?
Well, the betting favorite is Lomachenko. I think it's an extraordinary contest, and I think it's the greatest buy that we've seen in sports in a long time. The fact that ESPN is putting this on, and the cost basically is zero, is mind-boggling. It's a confrontation between the master and the slasher. Lomachenko has one of the most unique skill sets that I've seen in the history of boxing. But frankly, he's really a featherweight that's a glorified junior lightweight, and he's fighting at lightweight. The man had, as an amateur, 395 wins and only one loss. And he is something very special that's really seen in a lifetime. On the other hand, Lopez is a very big lightweight, more like a junior welterweight or perhaps even a welterweight. The day of the fight, I believe that Lomachenko will come in at a maximum 142, 143, and Lopez will weigh about 158, 159, perhaps even a little more. So you've got a small lightweight against a large one. You got I consider Lomachenko to be what you would consider a Picasso, a Rembrandt, just a master. But he's with young blood. That's a tremendous puncher. That's dangerous. So I think the fight has every element of glitz and glamour and excitement. And I really think it's a crossover event in which not only boxing fans, but sports fans should really tune in.
Good points. And let me ask you really quick. I talked to Don about this too, with Fury moving on from Wilder, and their talk of him possibly rematch with Wallen, which was a very a big fight. Fury got hurt. He got cut. He had 50 stitches. Do you see that as a possible rematch that they could sell?
Well, that's an interesting thing that Don brought up. I think they're going to look for a gimme, because I think that in their minds they're thinking about making a Joshua fight, which would do telephone numbers, huge numbers. So I think they're going to take a minimal risk. It's difficult to gauge what kind of risk it would be if they have a rematch with Wallen. So I'm not sure, but I know that Fury wants a fight, and I forget the name. There's a German contender with a good record, but really his record is better than he is. So I'm really not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, let me interject because we just talked about the Lomachenko fight, no fans, and I'm assuming in England it's the same thing. So the amount of money they have to pay for this fight, you're talking a Joshua fight, they'll probably do 80 to 90,000 people. You may not have any fans there, so they're also limited what kind of purses they can pay. And I would hope that they do the same thing with Fury as they're doing with Lomachenko. That's free to air. It's not a pay-per-view, so at least he's going to get tremendous exposure. You may get a lesser match, but if you get a high rate of people watching, a great audience, then it would have paid off to build a Joshua fight even bigger.
It's Don. I think that this event, and I call it event the Lomachenko fight. I'm really hoping, and I'll be shocked if they don't do extraordinary ratings. The showcase well. They have a lot of previews on a fight. Last night I was watching sort of a dull because it wasn't a real press conference. And I really think that it's something that's really unusual. And boxing needs these ratings to go through the roof.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping it does. As far as the Joshua fight is concerned, if they fight in this, if Fury fights a gimme fight in December, by the time the Joshua fight would take place, perhaps at that point, in certain locations, there might be able to be a crowd. Again, no one has a crystal ball, so no one knows with this pandemic what that situation is going to be.
Yeah.
You mentioned Don, England. There's a pretty good heavyweight fight scheduled there. Joe Joyce against Daniel Dubois.
Yeah.
And when will that fight take place? I mean, how is it without spectators? How could they pay two of the top young heavyweights in the world the money they deserve? And just the idea that the two of them would be fighting one another, that's extraordinary in this day and age.
It is.
Dennis knows quite a bit, by the way,
Heavyweights.
about moving heavyweights and so on. And, his association, obviously with Jerry Cooney, bringing Oleg Moskayev back from the scrap heap to a world title, promoting Tim Witherspoon, George Foreman. So he could tell you quite a bit about the heavyweights.
Well, I think that the boys' Joyce fight is a special fight in England. I'm pretty certain it's going to take place. Personally, I favor the boys on that particular matchup on styles and some other variables. But boxing is going through a period of transition, and a lot of adjustments are being made. Given the coronavirus situation, but some of them may turn out to be a blessing in disguise. So I think it's going to be a very interesting. I think the heavyweight division has some life in it right now. There's some good young prospects coming up, and for a while with the Klitschko's heavyweight championship, Vladimir, although had some phenomenal achievements, was a safety first type of fighter that didn't really capturize or mesmerize or stir much excitement. And I think there's a lot more excitement that's we're going to witness in the heavyweight division than we've seen in a long time.
A good question about the Klitschko's, guys. I've always wondered, if there weren't two Klitschko's, two brothers, and there was one person, and you could combine their accomplishments, are you talking about the greatest heavyweight of all time? If you combine the two accomplishments into one man.
Yeah.
Well, it's you talk about an ideal situation of almost bionically creating the heavyweight. Vitaly was a warrior and had a warrior mentality. Vladimir was more a safety first type boxer because obviously he didn't have the chin. or some of the instincts, but had a lot of talent. And really, when you think about these guys holding the title for as long as they did, I'm not sure if it's a reflection of their talent or a reflection of how thin the heavyweight division was. Don, what do you think?
Go ahead, Don.
No, I was going to say, Vitaly, you know, he did give a great fight to Lennox Lewis at the end. He was ahead on the cards, and he got stopped on that very deep cut that he received, the fight in Los Angeles. They never fought a rematch because Lennox retired. Yeah, terrific fighters, and sometimes you don't have the greatest, style for the fans, but you can't say he wasn't effective. And I just want to say that, you know, we're overlooking one fight. Joshua still has to fight Pulev, who's a real tough guy, who's only lost that one fight himself to Klitschko on decision. So while we're talking about Wallen against Fury as a given, who knows what happens with Pulev? Of course, Joshua's heavily favored, but unfortunately, there's another fight along with the Lomachenko and a Dubois fight that the fans are not going to have the benefit of being able to see in person, and that's really tough. You know, it's wonderful that these fights are taking place with this pandemic. Two undefeated young heavyweights fighting each other. The number one contender Pulev fighting Joshua, Fury. But no fans being in the audience, boy, that's a real tough thing to.
Let me ask both Dennis and Don this. The biggest event I think each of you were ever involved with directly. Don, you and Zaire, Ali, and Foreman, where you were there on location, and Dennis, you, Cooney and Holmes. Okay, how would that event be remembered today? If there weren't any fans there, the magnitude of the event at the time was off the charts and is fondly remembered. Imagine there were no fans at either event. How would that have played out?
Well, I'm not sure of these mega events. The Holmes Cooney, Hearns Leonard, Hagler Leonard, Hearns Leonard. I'm not convinced that they would have been able to be put on without there being a live audience. To give you an example, Camels, just to put the name on the ring post, are paid between $2 and $3 million, just with their name on the ring post. I think it still holds the record for the greatest number of people at a fight in Las Vegas. To give you an idea, in pay-per-view, which was in its early stages, the buy rate was, if I tell it to you, and people are familiar with buy rates on pay-per-view, you would think that I'm coming from a different world. It was something like a 46% buy rate. Okay. Now, given the universe was much smaller and there were only about 2.5 million pay-per-views, and it was done as a combination, but the event was so huge that certain events will require a live audience. And again, a Leonard Hagler, a Leonard Duran, a Cooney Holmes, fights like that, I think, I don't think you're going to be able to put that on a studio, in a studio.
Yeah, I think that's why they're waiting on hopefully waiting on Fury against Joshua. I can't see that taking it so big. Again, it's a credit to Lomachenko. I mean, Jack, you and I were at the Ali Frazier fight. I don't know if Dennis was. And Mac, you were too young, and we know what the electricity was there with the live gate. You know, you can create a fan base from television, but the people will have a memory who were at that fight for the rest of their lives, and that's something that comes. You know, it's a visceral experience that you can't repeat on television. I'll tell you, I was not a boxing fan as a kid. I became a boxing fan. Now, this is where live TV impacted it. That was the first time in a decade that they had live, free-to-air television for a heavyweight championship fight. Ali fought Henry Cooper in 1966, a little boy. And interestingly enough, just coincidentally, that night they had a fight at Shea Stadium, the first ever held there, Jose Torres and Wayne Thornton. Because of seeing the fight on TV, I went to a live show in boxing. Very small crowd there, but that got me interested. But that electricity of the live crowd, that has a permanent effect on you. It says, I was there when. I was there when Mickey Mantle hit a home run. I was there when Tom Seaver pitched a no-hitter. You remember that you have a personal contact, whereas the whole world can see something on TV. So it's very, very hard. You know, it's a very tough thing to overcome.
Hey guys,
Don, if
go
I
ahead.
may say this to you, I was at the first Ali Frazier fight at the
Okay.
Cottage, and,
Guys,
and I don't think I think that left such an indelible impression in my mind that it became an unforgettable event. There were times during that fight you could hear a pin drop at Madison Square Garden. I mean, it was so electrifying that it's done. And interestingly enough, the first fight that I ever saw was a death feud by the name of Eugene Hairston against Jake LaMotta, and the second one was Sugar Ray Robinson against Rocky Graziano. And then I later met, I had the pleasure of meeting Robinson as a young kid. My father took me up to Harlem to meet him, and he said, "Kiddo, I hear you got a good left jab, forward." And of course, to me, Sugar Ray could have walked on water. I threw a left jab. He says, "Gee, it reminds me of mine." And you know what it is to tell an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old that? I think I was flying, not on the ground for weeks. But these things left impressions and laid the foundation for becoming I don't know, addicted to boxing. And boxing, even if you leave it for a while, I really do believe is a form of addiction.
Hey guys, Dennis, we lost your video again, but we still can hear you. So if you can get that, great. If not, we'll just carry on because we at least want to have your audio in there. And you know the Ali Frazier was my first boxing match I really watched. And from then on, I was hooked on boxing and became a huge Joe Frazier fan. But I want to ask. This is the first time that I ever had this much experience in boxing in the room together. So I want to ask you guys some questions. That includes you, Jack. And one of the first questions I got for you in promotions: who is the greatest promoter in the history of boxing? Is it Bob Arum, Don King, and I'll throw a crazy one in there, or was it Muhammad Ali? So what do you got, guys?
Oh, well, I think the Ali thing, if you want to get technical and include a fighter in it, I could say it's Floyd Mayweather. Look at all the money he made himself, and he's not an exciting fighter. But so we can include fighters in there. But the greatest promoter, I think Don would agree, even though he said Bob Arum before, it's different times, different eras. What Tex Ricker did with the first $1 Million Gate, he promoted the Jack Johnson, Jim Jeffries fight, then Dempsey's fights. Then you had Mike Jacobs, who promoted Joe Louis and many other champions throughout his career. And then you had Don King, whose style was so much different from Arum's. He did it more in his personality. I think what Don said before with Arum, if you look at longevity, how long Arum has done it, the man is close to 90 years old and he's still on top of his game for the most part. Is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, look, Arum came in, the first fight he was involved with as a promoter. There's a lengthy story I can tell about how Arum got in. He worked for the Justice Department. They had him investigate the Liston Patterson fights because of this revenue, all cash business on closed circuit. And I guess Arum said, wow, well, how does this business work? Oh, it's all cash. Well, obviously the mob was involved, so you towed the line with them. And all cash business, you make millions. This is for me. So he started 1966 in the fight in Toronto, Ali and Chavallo. And it was top rank was named something else in those days. Roy Hoffines, who later built the Astrodome and owned the Astros, and Harold Conrad. They were doing tennis and they were doing boxing, and then boxing overcame that. It was more profitable, more consistent for them. So he's been on the top level from 1966 to now. That's an incredible 54-year career. Rickett broke barriers that nobody else ever did. The remarkable thing about him, and also he helped fund and build Madison Square Garden, the one we had on 49th Street that was so analogous in boxing and so aligned with it. He did a show in Goldfield, Nevada, 1906. Can you imagine? No transportation. No, this is a backwater town even today in Nevada, between Joe Gans and Batley Nelson over the story about the $40,000 in gold. Unbelievable what he did. Mike Jacobs, another one. Our mutual friend Russell Peltz from Philadelphia always maintains that Herman Taylor was a most overlooked promoter. He started around 1906, ran into the 70s, and he was involved in the Dempsey-Tunney rematch and Joe Louis fights, Sugar Ray Robinson fights. every great fighter in the world, if you look at it, fought in Philadelphia. It was a mini New York, and he consistently ran shows all the time. So those are a few, and of course, but I think on a top level, Aram, he's sort of like a racehorse that lapped on Don King at the end. They were neck and neck for decades, and at the end, finally, King fell back, and Aram's just shot up. And
They're
that
like Mantle and Mays, more or less, neck and neck, and then one
that's
guy
right.
slowed down at the end. Yeah,
The other guy passed him, and I have to say,
right.
it goes back to organization. Bob Arum, his partner early was Mike Mallitz. His publicist was Harold Conrad. These are legendary people in the industry, and he's always had the best people. He was affiliated with Rodolfo Sabatini from Italy and Tito Lectori in Argentina. Now he works with Akihiko Honda, the great Japanese promoter, one of the best of all time. His associations, his staff, his organization is something that I can speak of as the best in the world. I think he's got 4 Hall of Famers in his organization. Irving Rudd is in the Hall of Fame as former publicist. Lee Samuels is current publicist. Bruce Trampler and Teddy Brenner, who worked for many years after leaving the Guard. So he surrounded himself with the best people, but he's a creative genius. But those half a dozen could take that mantle, you could argue. Jacobs and Rickett, I think, are the closest to him.
Well, I know Dennis is a fight manager. He's battling against those guys.
Go ahead, Dennis. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may give a somewhat different view, Jack, in your comparison of Mayweather and Ali, I think in terms of measuring what type of attraction or how good they were as a self-promoter, would be comparing a brand new Rolls Royce to a broken down Chevy.
Huh.
We have to understand there were different times. There wasn't pay-per-view during Ali's times. There was closed circuit.
Man.
If Ali came up during the days of pay-per-view, I could assure you that there would be no comparison.
I agree.
Okay. Ali was the most recognizable face in the world.
I agree.
I agree with Don. If we go back, we talk about Tex Rickett or Mike Jacobs. But in recent times, I think the distinction between Arum and King is an interesting one. Yeah, an interesting one. King had tremendous charisma. He became somewhat part of very much of the event. He was a master salesman. However, I believe our country was based upon a system of greed, but controlled greed.
Mm-hmm.
In Don's case, it was uncontrollable greed.
Yeah.
And the exploitation and use and abuse of what he did to fighters was, in many cases, reprehensible and unconscionable.
I agree with that
Arum,
100%.
on the other hand, has mellowed with age. And I agree with Don. He built a tremendous organization. King micromanaged. And Arum built up a great organization. And the best proof is the longevity. To think that the man is almost 90 years old and ESPN is still going strong.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Don wanted to do everything himself and make every decision himself. And you don't build a viable, strong organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the authenticity of Arum, not in the beginning or perhaps not in the middle, but his credibility as he got older and mellowed was very much enhanced.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the story where Arum one day, years ago, would say one thing, and the next day a reporter said, "You told me something different." And his response was, "Well, I lied yesterday, but I'm telling you the truth today." I think his veracity is much greater today as he mellowed, and he's done extraordinary things. I marvel at what he could do at the age he's in.
Hey guys, in fact, I had the privilege of interviewing Bob Arum on one of my other shows. He's quite a man. I got another question for you, and this is about controversial fights. What is the most controversial fight that you've witnessed that you know the loser, who was called the loser, won that fight?
There's many. Unfortunately, Don may have been a witness at the Tony Dempsey
Right.
fight, but that was before my time.
Only the second fight. I was too young for the first one.
No, that wasn't an injustice.
Yeah.
Dempsey just didn't follow the rules of going to the neutral corner for the
Mhm.
long count. I mean, there was no injustice. I'll tell you what decision bothered me that was really unjust that no one talks about. When Jorge Ahumada
Oh, right.
really beat Bob Foster.
Yeah,
They
I was
called
there.
it a draw, allowing Foster to hold on to his title.
Mhm.
Years later, I interviewed Foster, and he said, "Yeah, I thought I lost the fight. You know, he wouldn't have had a chance against me in my prime, but I did think I lost that night."
Well,
Yeah.
Jack, frankly, there's been so many fights with controversial endings, and I think it's about time that boxing enters the 21st century and gets out of the shadows and basks in the sunlight of the contemporary sports world. Some of these judges recently, okay, I mean, it's indefensible, their scoring, okay, and the commission should show some fortitude and some guts and hold them accountable. Now, certainly, there are rounds in boxing that can be very close, and I may believe one guy wins and you believe another one wins. However, there's some that are so one-sided. I think of the Ungus fight recently and another one. And there's some judges in California, some in Vegas, frankly, some in New York, some at the Mohegan Sun. I mean, I don't know if there's something happening to the memory of the fighters, of the judges, if something's happening with their eyesight, or worse. I hate to think it would be worse, but I think that the commissions must bring them in where they must defend how they scored a round. And I think this will serve the sport well because people are so disgusted of horrible decisions.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, just to answer your question directly, I would say fights I've seen, and I will include fights seen on television. You know, Jimmy Ellis and Floyd Patterson, when I was young, was a notoriously bad decision. Chavez and Whitaker was another one that ended as a draw, as Dennis brought up draws. And, of course, the Holyfield and Lennox Lewis draw. And the recent fight, we saw the Ugas fight. But, you know, when Dave's talking about, I agree 100%, and Jack and I have spoken about this before. We have a solution to that problem. We solved that problem some years ago when we started the 10-point must system rather than the round system. But this is the problem with the 10-point system. I wrote a piece and I gave a discussion once at a WBC convention. We should call it the 9-point must system because I did this study once of about 3,000 rounds. Now there's 300,000 reviews. 95% of those rounds were 10-9. That's basically saying that these judges saw the fight, that every fight, there was only 10% differential in the round. Yeah. That is impossible. We have, in effect, what you can theoretically do, you can have a 10-1 round. If you saw, what would that be? That'd be so overwhelming. But you don't score who won the round anymore. It's by how much. That's what you're supposed to do. So you should have many, many more 10-5, 10-4, 10-6. You should almost never have in a 10-point system that can never be an even round because you have 9 points variation. So he says it can't be even because you can go to a 10-4, 10-5. The problem is they're restricting themselves to 3 points, maybe a 10-9, a 10-8, 10-7. I've won a couple of times. That's in a 10-6. I don't recall ever seeing a 10-4, 10-3. But you can put that round there. And when I discussed this, Eddie Cotton, a late referee, said, "Well, Don, what you need is a baseline. So what's a 10-1?" So just theoretically to throw it out, a 10-1, and we've all seen it, the Dempsey-Willard fight, where he's knocked down 7 times. All right, that would be a baseline. That's 10. Now you go up from there. But you can go. We need many, many more fights that are 10-6, 10-5. A 10-9 should almost never be used. It should be a judgment call round. No 10-10. 10-8 is a close round. 10-7 clear cut. Then you go down to 10-6 and include knockdowns. 10-5, 10-4. You can judge so fine, but we're never using that. How many times have always heard that guy won that round big? And I would say to people, no, he didn't. It's a 10-9. Unless he's knocked them down, unless he's won 2 minutes and 59 seconds. A big round is the same as a close round. It's invariably 10-9 because mentally, psychologically, the judges are still scoring by rounds. And even we do it. Then it's just at about rounds. I'll say, oh, he won the fight, 9-3. Well, no, he didn't. He won it 118 to 114. But in our minds, we're still scoring by rounds and not by points. And the judges are not utilizing. You don't have to change the system. You just have to apply it properly. And maybe, Dennis, we don't need 500 judges. Maybe we need 50 qualified judges around.
Well, that could be true. Don, I think you have an interesting concept. The area where I don't agree with you on is I think that the concept, okay, in other words, I feel like a 10-0 or 10-1 round, when you start thinking of the incompetency of the judges on a system that's far from perfect, and I agree with you, should be improved, they screw up on 10-9 rounds and 10-8 rounds. Could you imagine the abomination if they had to score 10-0, 10-1, 10-2, 10-3?
Right, but you have to educate.
But I think there's
seminars they have to have.
I think there's a way it could be improved.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with your concept, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but perhaps not having it as to the extreme of 10-0, 10-1.
Mm-hmm.
Because these guys are screwing up 10-9, 10-8 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of it is it's inexplicable.
They haven't been taught how to score. They haven't been taught how to apply the 10-point mustard.
Well, guys, what would be better than that is to have a small pool of judges
Yes,
who judge
yes.
all title fights,
Correct.
like they do for the NBA Finals, Major League Baseball, the World Series. Who use the very best, and that'll be their full-time job. They'll
Salary
travel,
judges like you
get a
do
small
umpires
pool.
in
Yeah.
football and in football. I agree 100%. They were the only sport I don't think they salary the officials.
No.
So it's so true, Don, and the fact that a guy could be so terrible, and they're not accountable. There's no consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a guy who I'll mention his name, who I had a lot of respect for as a referee. And lately, in a couple of fights, I'm talking about Lou in California, have been horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I say horrendous, I'm talking about indefensible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if the commission are going to be political plums and aren't going to have, excuse the expression, the balls to hold these judges accountable, you're going to wind up. It's going to wind up ultimately being either corrupt.
I got to get one quick thing in that I forgot. Russell Moore is going to be refereeing the Lomachenko-Lopez fight. To me, he's not one of the top referees that they could bring in for a fight of that magnitude. I'm a little concerned on that account that there could be an extra quick stoppage or whatever. I'm going on the record as saying that now. I'm a little bit concerned about it. So if a controversy comes out, I'm not second guessing.
Jack, I just wanted to mention one thing to you. I agree with you in that interpretation. I think it's a manager's job to do the homework on a ref. For example, there's some referees that want to be part of the show. They want to be seen on TV. They do their job where they think that they're the star. There's others that don't let you fight on the inside. There's others that let you excessively hold. So I think that, and there's some that are clearly less competent than other referees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I remember one guy who was always worried about getting hit. So if you had a fighter that liked to fight on the inside, he was the perfect referee.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a guy, Jay, in Vegas, who you could be having a war, a great fight, and all of a sudden he'll start warning you about holding. And I'm not talking about excessive holding. I'm talking about minimal holding. I mean, some of it just doesn't make sense. The best referees are the ones that knows what's happening, and you very rarely see.
Yeah, Arthur Mercanti to me was the best. I mean, that applies right, but that applies to judges as well. There are certain judges who like a certain style. They prefer a boxer. They prefer a slugger. They prefer a hard puncher, and that affects their scoring. They overemphasize the power of a punch. Maybe one good punch to them is more important than 3 lighter jabs. So you can analyze that as well. Chuck Giampa, late judge, started a business where he would analyze the judge almost like a jury does. You know, when they do voir dire and they examine the kind of jurors that you want to have, or what kind of professions they're from, what kind of education. When they go on a case, how many women, how many people of different ethnicities or races you want on a case, because they perceive it in a different way. So that's another. But yeah, I don't think the judges are educated enough, and you blame the commissions a lot as well because they will discourage them from going lower on the scale. I know for a fact there are many commissions say you cannot score below a 10-6. Well, why not if the round merits it? You can score anything you want in theory. And I think the judges were instructed by commissioners who were instructed by people who always were based in the round system. But
You know,
the question
you
of
know,
the
guys, believe it or not, we're out of time.
Wow.
I know that went by fast. We need like 3 or 4 hours when we have you guys. You guys were excellent. It was a pleasure having you on. I hope to get you guys back on if we have another big fight coming up, and we can talk about it again. It was an unbelievable time I had there. I want to thank you all for coming in, and thank other people. We had a lot of viewers today. Yeah,
Thank you,
and we
guys.
really
It was a
appreciate
pleasure.
And we'll see you again soon. I'll be in touch with you if we got any more big fights coming on, and we'd love to have me and Jack would love to have you guys on again. We surely would.
Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Best,
guys.
Thanks.
And Dennis will fix his technical problems, and I won't glow in the dark next time you see him.
Okay, that's great.
To get on the show. Thank you.
Thank you guys, and we'll
Got
see you
my
tomorrow.
Loma cap on. Notice.
There you go.
Lopez, so.
And we'll see all you folks tomorrow for the Friday football preview. And again, thank you very much to Don Majeski and Dennis Rappaport, two unbelievable experts to have along with Jack, Iceman Scully, and Joe Santo today. What a show! Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Have a great